The information shared in this episode is for educational purposes only and should not be considered personalized financial advice. Please consult with a qualified financial professional regarding your individual circumstances. Also, this advice may not be suitable for UK residents. Hi guys, welcome back to Her Career, Her Way, a podcast where we're all about empowering ambitious women in their 20s and helping them navigate the chaos of building a career as well by giving them strategies and tools. So today I'm very lucky because I have a very important guest today. Her name is Lori Atwood, and she is the creator of Fearless Finance, which is a financial platform that offers one-to-one consultations with certified financial planners and can help people address any needs that they want. And they can be beginners like us in our 20s, or they can also cater to people that are, in their 50s or 60s. Wherever you're at financially, they are here to help. And so Lori Atwood has been a certified financial planner and has over 2 decades of financial experience, as well as helped over 1,360 plus clients. And she went from a telecom banker to now opening her own business in entrepreneurship. And today's focus in this episode is talking all about kind of the financial adulting basics, from savings to investings to credit cards, and also unpacking kind of the psychology behind your spending. And so I'm so excited to get on with this episode, and I hope you guys resonate with the things and take a few tips and tricks along so that you can go on your journey towards financial independence as well as financial freedom. So let's go into the episode because it's such a good one, and Lori Atwood has some amazing advice. I'm really happy to have you on here because I know that you're a certified financial planner and you've had 25 years of experience. I kind of wanted to start out by just hearing your journey and how you got into finance in general. I read a little bit that you had debt collector parents, and maybe that kind of fueled this reason to have this financial independence.
Yeah, I came from no money at all, as in, are we going to make rent next month kind of a family circumstance, but was lucky enough to get a lot of financial aid for a very good college and get a good education and those sorts of things. But I never wanted to live like my parents. That was like the biggest thing for me. I never wanted to be like that. And sometimes people say, whatever you're most kind of obsessed with is what you end up being called to do in your career or whatever. I think I'm definitely in that category. And so I was all about making money. I went into investment banking. I paid my student loan. I didn't have that many student loans, but I paid them all off within a couple of years, couple of bonuses in investment banking in London, by the way. That's when I was living there, and telecom investment banking. And I was like happy to be making money, but that wasn't quite what I wanted to do. And I bounced around in different areas of finance because I somehow, when you're real young, you're like, I want to be an astronaut and I want to be a ballerina. And and I never thought of myself somebody who would be in finance.
Mhm.
But yet I never seemed to get away from it. I was just drawn back like some huge vacuum back to finance. But I worked in private equity. I was the CFO of an early internet startup in the first internet boom that was started by one of my college friends.
Mhm.
And so I started to learn a lot of different aspects of finance. And when I got married and had my daughter, my husband was like, you want to stay home with her for a couple of years. And we were just starting with that 2008 Great Recession. And he's like, you're never going to get a bonus in any of this. So, why don't you start now? And so I was home with her for 3 years trying to think what my next move was. What did I want to do next? And I was messing around with the idea of doing short videos. This is all before there was no social media, or social media was just starting at that time. Short videos on YouTube about parenting. And I had experts come in and I'd videotape them and put them up. And I'm like, well, the information's really good, but it's really kind of flat. And so I thought,
Mhm.
I need to test formatting, and I have to be able to test it on myself because I can't waste other people's time. So I emailed everyone I knew and I said, hey, can I come and do a free seminar on personal finance? Because that was the only thing I knew well enough to do. and videotape myself. And they were like, sure, come on and do that. And then people
Hmm.
started saying, hey, can you take clients? And that was the genesis of this company. So it was very sort of serendipitous. It was not, I wasn't looking for it. I somehow, yet
Hmm.
again, every time I tried to exit finance, I got sucked back in.
Yeah, I definitely understand that. And it's so cool how just kind of these things just happen organically when we don't really expect it. And personal finance is so important. I can speak for my generation. It's
I'm not your
daunting. I
generation,
mean,
but yeah.
yeah, but it's so daunting to just understand it. I mean, a lot of the people that I talk to don't even know how to budget, or they're scared to kind of look at how much money they've actually spent.
There's a lot of shame.
There's a lot of shame and guilt towards it, and as well as kind of a scarcity mindset towards
Definitely.
finance. And so, I guess, how do you think we should approach budgeting?
So your generation became adults in, I'm guessing at how old you are, became adults after that 2008 recession.
Hmm.
And that was extremely difficult finance for anyone. And that's all you knew, right? And so I'm just talking about that scarcity mindset. Everything feels like, oh my God, I don't know when my next bonus is coming. I don't know if my job is secure. I don't know. And then there was COVID, and that created more of a scarcity mindset for everybody, right? Everybody was scared. So I appreciate why there's so much of a scarcity mindset for the younger generation. That makes sense to me. And the shame is intergenerational. People feel shame around money all the time, and they shouldn't, but they do. And I always say to people that money is a tool. Don't blame the money. It is not about money. It's about all the other things. And, trying to make sure that you make rent every month puts a glaring light on those other things that people don't necessarily want to have to look at.
Hmm.
And so I am going to get to your budgeting question in one
Oh,
second.
of course. Yeah.
And so, what I always say to people is from the standpoint of personal finance, the most important thing is your happiness and
Mm.
your satisfaction. Anytime there's a hole in your life, I don't like my relationship with my mother. I don't like my romantic relationship. I don't like my job. I don't like where I live. I don't like my dog. I don't like, you have to like your dog. I don't like my relationship to my body, whatever it is, there's going to be much more spending than there should be to fill that gap. Because then all of a sudden, that excitement that you get from buying the latest pair of shoes or the latest gadget or whatever you're into is giving you that little bit of happiness to make you continue and go through life. When really
Hmm.
what you should be doing is thinking about what is the main thing that's causing you this discomfort. And that's going to reduce the spending
Yeah, getting to the
naturally.
root cause. Yeah.
Yes. So that's the overwhelming baseline of budgeting, is that if you're trying to fill some gap in satisfaction, you're never going to get ahead of it. You will not get ahead of that wave or that issue. I hear this all the time, and my husband actually even did this, and I was like, what are you doing? A couple years ago, people were doing this no buy year, and they wouldn't buy
Mm.
anything for the whole year. I don't know if you remember this. It's like 1 or 2 years ago, and my husband did it. I'm like, you're crazy. You're crazy, right? And because I say to people all the time, there's no buy year. My
Hmm.
90-year-old mother spends about $400 a month on discretionary spending still.
Wow.
Okay. She's 90. Trust me, she doesn't really socialize or do much of any of that kind
Hmm.
of thing. It's never zero. The question is what is the right amount for your earnings? And in
Hmm.
many parts of this country, your earnings plus your housing, right? What is the
Yep.
right amount? And can you track it and stay within it? Because if you're staying within it, you feel very empowered. You can be like, I'm going to buy this pair of shoes and I'll go out less this month because I'm still
Hmm.
within my $800 of discretionary spending this month.
Right. So kind
How
of
would that
looking at
be?
it as like a percentage of how much you actually make and then
It
seeing
should
if
be
it
an
fits
actual dollar amount,
a
but you can
dollar amount.
calculate it as a percentage, right? I get nervous about percentages because if you're a lower
Hmm.
earner, the percentage will be wrong. It'll feel wacky, right? So if you're
Hmm.
an investment banker versus somebody who's like doing a bunch of different gigs to get by, your percentages be completely different. And so what you want to do is take your net income, however many jobs you have, whatever you're doing, after all the taxes are taken out, the benefits are taken out, the retirement is taken out, subtract your housing,
Hmm.
subtract an amount for things like utilities, groceries, transportation. These are what I call recurring costs. And then
Hmm.
you should have some amount left over. And of that amount, you need to have your discretionary and what you're going to save, what I call margin, which is what you save each month.
And how, I guess, should people reframe saving as? Because I know there's this part of you that wants to have fun and go out with your friends and have a social life and things like that.
Totally.
But then there's also a part of you that, what if a emergency happens and you need to save for that event, or, you get laid off from your job or something.
Yeah,
And you do need to have that kind of balance of having fun yet having enough to
that's
sustain
real.
yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, that is real. And so, what I say to people, it's the same thing I said to my child when she started getting allowance, right? Is
Hmm.
that if you were to put your dollars into a shoebox, you would want, I mean, for most people, you would want to have donations, saving, and spending. What we don't want people to do is think of saving as a one off that they do once in a while, maybe at Christmas bonus time, maybe whatever it is. No, I want people saving either monthly or weekly or whatever feels okay consistently to
Hmm.
get in the habit of saving, that saving should be done alongside spending.
And where do you suggest people save? Because I know there's high yield savings, and then there's also kind of just in your checking and then your savings account, which is pretty
Yeah.
minor in a lot of bank accounts and things like that.
Yeah. And so the best way to do it for young people, there's two really good options in the US, that is. A high yield savings account, those are fabulous. They're online, they're easy to get to. Fabulous. It's great. Or two, an individual brokerage account at a discount broker, and you can leave the money in a money market there. Even if you're in a brokerage account, you are not in the market. You're not subject to market ups and downs unless you've invested in equities in the market. But a brokerage account itself tends to have a very high money market rate. So that's a good interest rate. My cash is in a brokerage account, if
Hmm.
that makes any sense. And so, how much cash is usually the question people ask all the time,
Yeah.
right? So if you're young and single, you're in your 20s, you just graduated college, you're having your first sort of single gal apartment, whatever it is, guy single gal apartment, you should have $1,000 to $2,000 sitting somewhere in a savings account for what I call rainy day
Hmm.
expenses, car repairs, an emergency flight to see your grandparent who
Hmm.
suddenly got ill, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
$1,000 to $2,000 is enough for someone your age.
Hmm.
Then you need an account either in a high yield savings account or a brokerage, either way, with 3 to 6 months of your expenses, and that's for emergencies.
Hmm.
What is an emergency? That should be the next question.
Yeah.
Is a total loss of income. A rainy day event is like a car repair, a chipped tooth, a broken window. An emergency is a total stoppage of income. When you're young and
Hmm.
single, that's usually due to one thing, which is job loss. But as you age, it could be due to job loss, divorce, or some sort of health and wellness issue. And then you need the emergency savings of 3 to 6 months to live on while you're out there looking for a new job.
Yeah. And I've been reading the book called The Psychology of Money, which I
Yeah,
think is a wonderful book. And one of the things it talks about is kind of how saving your money is to reframe it as something that gives you financial freedom and independence. And with that saving, it gives you that independence to then have the ability to, if you lose your job, to be fine, to be safe.
exactly. Exactly.
And
It's
so, yeah, and I think
empowering.
that's what we forget. It's empowering. Yes, exactly.
It's
Yeah.
empowering. And so, because a lot of people think of savings as deprivation,
Mhm.
right? And it's not at all deprivation. It's the opposite of deprivation, especially now because people are losing their jobs all around. And not only are people losing their jobs, but young people who are just out of college are having a lot of trouble getting new jobs or getting their
Mhm.
first job, whichever it is. And I don't see that changing anytime in the next year. I got to be honest with you. And so you need some money to live on. I mean, you may have parents that you can go and live back in their house. I don't know, but that's not an option for everybody. So you're going to need to figure it out. And so having that saved is extremely empowering.
And how, I guess, would you give advice about kind of the economic uncertainty in general?
Inflation is rising, interest rates are being cut, and that's scary in and of itself, because when inflation rises and interest rates are cut, we have the possibility of this hideous thing called stagflation. But I think what the US Federal Reserve sees is that the job market is far worse than the risk of inflation, and that should send a chill up everybody's spine. And the job market is really not in a good place. And so that makes people nervous about changing jobs if they're not happy in their job. And that's bad overall for well-being, which is what I started talking about at the beginning of the time.
Yeah. I think when employment and the job market is hard, we tend to get even more fearful with just spending and how to deal with our finance. And we're trying to like keep it close to us. And I think honestly, that's part of the reason why a lot of people are now looking towards being more financially literate and seeing how to budget more effectively and how to invest and kind of things like that.
I think in terms of budgeting effectively, the key is to track it.
Mm.
The challenge people have is that they don't want to see it. If you are ever a person who is looking to drop a pound or two here or there, it's the same part of your brain working, right? I'll just have this little dessert. It's no big deal. And I don't care. Your neighbor doesn't care, right? It's all just going to be you. You're the one who's going to pay the price in the end. And budgeting's the same. And so the first thing that we have to do as entities who want to learn how to budget and increase their financial well-being is not be afraid of the transparency, not be afraid to look.
Yeah, you said in an article, I think I read online, about your approach to spending is like a pathologist doing an autopsy. And so I want you to kind of go
My
for like
my approach to
what do you mean by
tracking.
that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's my approach to tracking. Yeah.
hmm
So there are, I don't know, millions of apps out there that would like more than anything else to help you track. But what you have to do is sit down and think about your own personality and what works for you. So I have some clients where like every little detail, and they don't mind tracking every little piece of bubble gum that they buy. And then for other people, they just can't do that. I'm one of those people. I can't track everything. I don't track everything. And so you want to find an app that suits your way of thinking. So when I look at people's spending, I do it like an autopsy. I'm looking back. But when you're trying to track as somebody who's just trying to be on top of their finances, their personal finances every month, you want to make sure you can see it during the month so that you're not, this is especially the case with married couple or people who are partnered, right? You want to see it in time to make change. So if you're like, I'll go through my credit card at the end of the month, you're going to go through it. You're going to feel guilt. You're going to feel shame. You're going to be angry. You're going to feel regret. That's not helping anyone. That's not doing anything to change your behavior. It's not doing anything. If anything, it's sending you back into a little hole, right? So tracking it by the credit card is not going to work. What I developed an app for my clients, and there are other apps out there, whatever it is, where it's just a progress bar and it scrapes your transactions from your credit card and your checking account. You can just look down at the progress bar and it's only tracking your discretionary spending. You only need to track your discretionary spending and your groceries because that's where people go over. Your internet bill is the same every month. Your utilities, believe it or not, are more or less predictable, right? Even what you spend on your pet, even your transportation costs, your parking, whatever it is, that stuff is nothing to worry about. That stuff's all very predictable. The full discretionary spending and the groceries. And if you can just track that through the month so you can say, I can't buy those shoes this month because I'm a little ahead. I'll wait for next month. I've got you then.
I was wondering why do you think people overspend on their groceries?
I'm hoping there's some graduate student in anthropology out there somewhere studying this, but people overspend on food. They overspend on food. I mean, just look at in Europe, you have much smaller fridges, but
Yes.
if you look into an American fridge, you could easily see 2 to 3 tortilla wraps that are open, two
Mm.
packages of them that are open, 2 things of yogurt and like whatever it is. So we all
Hmm.
overbuy. Some of it is just that sort of like, oh, hey, that looks good. So we all have that. That's like a normal brain thing. Or they buy a lot and they eat out and it all gets
Right.
rotten and goes bad or whatever it is.
So how much do you think, if you're living alone and you're in your 20s, how much do you actually think you should be spending on groceries?
Yeah. So if you're in an urban area in the US, I would
Hmm.
expect you to spend $400.
A
It
month.
could be less if you're in yes, sorry, a month.
Yeah.
So my calculation is $350 to $400 per beating heart in the family per month, right? So if you're living with your significant other, I would expect probably about 750 to 800 because things like tinfoil and
Hmm.
whatever, those are amortized over 2 people instead of over one person in at that
Right.
point, but it would be about that.
Sometimes I feel like just in general in the US, there's this thing of overconsumption.
Yeah.
And I guess, why do you think people spend more than they actually can?
Well, this goes back to what I said at the beginning.
Hmm.
There are 2 motivations. One is you're unhappy with something somewhere and you're compensating. And the other is this FOMO and this keeping up with the Joneses. And that drives so much. And it
Hmm.
is utterly useless. It is an absolute waste. It's a waste for the earth. And it's a waste of your time and money and resources too. And now, since we have a way of seeing what everybody's wearing all the time and driving and vacationing at and all of those things, and they're only showing their very, very best stuff,
Yeah, the
we all think
highlights.
we're running behind and we're all running to catch up. And, well, she has this car and he has that kitchen appliance and whatever else. And so that's driving it. And companies love it because that's just more consumption, right? The job market is squeezing now, but the consumer is still buying. The wealthy
Hmm.
consumer is still buying in America. The lower income, lower earning consumers now have more credit card debt. When will this cycle end? I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of an ego thing as well. It's like we attach our
Definitely.
financial status and what we have and all the discretionary spending towards our ego. And I think I read somewhere saying that nobody really cares how much you buy or how much you spend as much as you do, or what kind of car you're driving as
Nobody's
much as
looking.
you do.
Yeah.
And so kind of really detaching your ego from your things that you have and desiring less and being happy with
Desiring
that.
less and hooking your ego to the things that are a priority for you, not for your neighbor, right? Because if you're like, say, for example, my husband and I we love to garden. That's our
Hmm.
thing in the summer. So we'll spend some money on gardening supplies and stuff like that. And that's fine, right? As long as you know what your priority is and you're not spending on gardening supplies, which is a hobby, and on clothes, and on what car you drive, and on it's the ands. If I can get everybody to the ors, we're good. And so consumption around something that's important to you, maybe it's your physical fitness, maybe it's your pet, maybe it's you're seeing a therapist, your mental health is taking priority. Fabulous. Just you don't do everything else with it. Figure out what the priority is. And I'm using a violent metaphor. Pivot the guns to that priority
Hmm.
and let the rest of it kind of slide. I think one of the main things, especially people at your age, to socialize, you're a lot of times it's around a meal, right?
Hmm.
So if that's the case, then I would expect less grocery shopping if you're spending more money out and that's your social break. Because I
Hmm.
want people to socialize. Again, that goes back to the happiness thing. But you may, at your age, you may want to balance those 2 things. As you age, I would hope that you would have 1 to 2 evening meals out per week at most.
Yeah. And I think more days now, there's a lot more kind of house parties and flat parties
Good.
where people are cooking and having a
Excellent.
social interaction like that. Or I've been seeing online as well as like free things to do, going to
I
parks
love it.
and walking. And just, I feel like sometimes we forget that we don't need to always spend to have a good time.
That's right. That's right. So many people are walking, and I think it's fabulous. So, if you have a hobby, go for
Hmm.
it. But just
Yeah.
don't do all of the other things. Try to find activities with your friends. Probably your friends are earning about what you're earning. Do things that make sense for what you're earning.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I guess I wanted to touch on credit cards because I feel like that's a very big topic with just kind of
Yes, it
people
is.
starting out and kind of which credit card to get, why is it needed, why building a credit score is so important as well.
So I'm going to give you an answer that you're probably not expecting.
I'm
Okay.
excited.
Okay. Your credit score is not that important.
Interesting. Okay.
Your credit score is very important if you want to get a mortgage,
Mm.
or if you're buying a car, or if somebody's looking you up because they're going to rent a flat to you.
Mhm.
Then they care. They want to know that you pay your bills. If you're not in that situation, you own your car, you're happy with your car, you're going to have it for a while, you just bought your house, your flat or your house, or you're renting steadily and you're not looking to buy in the next 3-4 years, I'm less worried about the credit score itself. But what the credit score represents is whether you're on top of your consumer debt. And so if you want to use it as a proxy for that, I've got no problem with it. But what I'm looking for as a financial planner is that you're paying your credit card off in full each month. And when I say in full, it's the last statement balance. You don't need to pay it off weekly. You don't need to pay the current balance. So my bank, at least, and I think most banks, they'll say last statement, current balance, minimum payment. So as long as you pay the last statement balance, you are on top of your credit cards. I think you don't need an enormous high limit. I think that if you're young and single, $2,000, $5,000, as long as you can get an flight home if you needed one in an emergency, I think you're okay. There's no need to have an exorbitant limit. The challenge is when people make sure you have at least a little discretionary spending. It cannot be zero. For young people right out of college, I'm looking for at least $400 to $800 a month. And then you should still have at least a little bit of money to save. You're going to have to tweak those expenses and cut those expenses until you do. Because if you're doing that, then you should have no trouble paying your credit card off each month. So the
Right.
critical piece is not what credit card. I don't care. The critical piece is that you know how much you can spend each month and you can pay it off each month.
Which I think people forget. And then you have to pay interest on top of that.
A
And
lot of
that's huge.
interest. Yes, it's a lot of interest.
I think people think that with credit cards, they can, if they don't track it and if they don't actually budget how much they can actually pay it off, then they just think it's kind of a free card to just tap
It's
on.
free
And
cash flow. That's what I'm
yeah, it's free
saying, is they
cash.
think it's another income stream. It is not.
It's not. Yeah.
It is not. And so you want to work really hard to get whatever little bit of savings comes out of the bottom. Once you have your $1,000 to $2,000, and then you have 1 month, at least 1 month of expenses, you can start tapping that margin to pay off credit card balances and get them down to zero. It's the
Yeah.
more you accumulate, what ends up happening, if you look at it as like a vertical column, the more credit card debt you end up accumulating, the more your minimums and the servicing of the credit cards costs you each month. And that
Mm.
squeezes the money you have then for transportation and food and your pets and your utilities. Keeps squeezing, squeezing, squeezing. So all you can do is take out more credit card debt and you're in a circle. And that is how people go bankrupt.
Now we're going to take a short little break, but make sure to come back as we have so much more to discuss in the episode. I want to move on to kind of investing because I
Yeah,
think that's really interesting.
it is.
What's your kind of investment 101? Where should beginners
Oh, I've
even
got that.
start?
Yes. Especially for young people, but for
Yeah.
anyone. I used to be on the trading floor in London. I've spent a
Mm.
lot of years in that world. And I do not believe that people beat the market. I don't believe in what's called alpha, which is the amount that you beat the market, especially after fees and taxes. I'm an index fund gal. ETFs are fine, whatever choice you make there, but index, tracking the index. In the UK, they call them trackers. Here we call it passive investing or index investing, whichever. You're not going to beat the market. Nobody beats the market. These fancy algorithms with acres and acres of computing power, they're still not beating the market. So hitch your wagon is something that you know is a winner. If you have enough money to invest in a brokerage account, get into a discount broker. You shouldn't be paying more than $25, $35 a year for an account, just a plain vanilla self-managed account at a discount broker. Open it up. If you have a few $100s to invest, and here in America, but I would give the same advice in Europe, to be honest.
Hmm.
Buy the S&P 500 index and
Yeah.
forget it exists. Just forget it, unless you're adding to it. If you prefer the total market, that's fine too. Either one. But
Yeah.
that's where
So
you start.
you think $100 is fine to just start investing
I
into
think
an S&P?
$100 is absolutely fine because everybody has to start somewhere. So the critical piece with the 100 is, what are we adding each month? Once you've got your cash buckets full, if you're adding $100 a month and you're 25, you're going to be
Mhm.
wealthy later.
Yeah. Yeah.
So do it. Yeah.
Because it's all about compounding of time.
It's all and only about compounding in time. It's about the time value of money, which is the
Hmm.
fancy way of saying compounding.
Yeah,
And at your
absolutely.
age, your time horizon is very, very long.
Yes. Yeah. What about people that have kind of student loans and things like that? How do they kind of manage having that debt and then also wanting to save
Yeah. So
or invest?
again, I strongly recommend that you make sure you have your rainy day bucket and at least 1 month of expenses, but preferably 3 months of expenses saved in cash. I typically am less worried about paying off student debt if your interest rate is reasonable. If you have like 5% or less, I wouldn't rush on that. Make sure you're paying to the principal,
Hmm.
right? I don't like interest only payment without getting into too much math. Your principal can increase if you're just paying the interest. Okay, so be careful there. So you always want to be making a principal and an interest payment, but you don't need to rush to pay it off with your sort of cash, that excess cash. You could be investing in that brokerage account. You could be saving for a down payment, whatever it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And then kind of what are your takes on the 401k, I know in America, and then also the Roth IRA? Yeah, it's hard for people like my age thinking like 50 years in advance trying to save for that. And how do you kind of
I know, and
foresee
there's
that as, yeah, your future planning?
it's really easy to just be like, I'm going to deal with this later, right? Again, going back to what we said 2 minutes ago, the only thing that matters in personal finance is time horizon and compounding. They're the same. They're really one and the same because you can't compound if you don't have time horizon. But that's the only thing that matters. And so the earlier you start, the better off you are. Now, I recognize some people are in graduate school, they're living on loans, whatever it is. I really want people to start by their late 20s. If you're employed and your employer offers a 401k, minimally make sure you're contributing enough to get the full match. If you don't know what
Mhm.
that is, email HR, they'll tell you. Make sure that you're doing at least the full match. But what I prefer is that you're doing a total of 15% of your gross income. So if you make $100,000 a year, I'm using that number because it's an easy math to do.
Yeah.
You want to make sure you're doing 15,000 including the employer match. So if your employer matches at 5%, you would need to do 10% and then you would be doing my total of 15. If you can't do that because of other things, housing is too expensive, whatever it is, make sure you're at least getting your full match.
Hmm.
So the Roth is a different thing. A Roth IRA in America, it's limited to $7,500 a year at your age, and you need to be making below a certain income level to be able to take advantage of it.
Hmm.
Okay, and I don't want to quote the income level because it changes every calendar year with the IRS, but you can Google it.
Yeah.
And I love Roth IRAs if you're eligible and you have the excess cash. Do it for sure. But the first step is making sure you get your match in your employer and then trying to get to your 15%. And then if you can do your Roth, I'm on board. Fabulous. If I can make one little comment, if
Mhm.
your employer offers a Roth 401k and the new sort of techie startup-y places do, then
Mhm.
you want to do at least 25% of your 15% into the Roth 401k. So just by way of example, if you get a 5% match and you're doing 10%,
Yeah.
then you want to make sure that 2 to 3% of the 10% goes into Roth and then the rest goes pre-tax. And that way you're growing your Roth and your pre-tax money as you age. I hope that was clear.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
that is definitely clear.
It can be complex. And lots of people are not even offered that. So it's not even a question for some people.
Yeah, it's a hard thing, but I think you made it really simple to, the first things that you need to do are the index funds. You don't have to worry about the individual stocks. You don't have
Nope.
to even think about beating the market because nobody really does. And also there's normally little correlation between investment effort and results anyways.
Oh, God, that's true. And women, particularly, they're like, oh, all the guys are doing all of these fancy investments and they're making so much money. Here's the deal. If
Mhm.
you put that money into an S&P 500 index or a US total market index, you're making more than that guy over time. You simply are statistically. So whatever they're bragging about, it's either they're exaggerating, they're full on lying, or they don't know how to measure their gain after taxes and fees.
Mhm.
So you're doing better in the index fund than they are. And the issue is that a lot of time gals are like, women are like, we want to do an investment club. And so I
Mhm.
think those things are great as long as you're mostly talking about index funds. Yeah.
And then what about CDs kind of? What are those?
Okay, so a CD is a certificate of deposit. A CD is a cash equivalent or it's a cash savings, right? So what we were talking about was stock in the ETFs, equities, also called equities.
Mhm.
Then there's fixed income. Fixed income means you get an interest rate. With stock, you get a gain. You may get a dividend, but you get mostly it's about gain, right? So
Mhm.
fixed income is things like bonds, money markets, and certificates of deposit, municipal bonds in the US, that kind of thing. And they have a fixed rate of interest. And the Fed
Mhm.
just reduced that fixed rate of interest just last week. You could get a 3 month, you can get a 9 month, you can get a 14 month, and they come in different terms. And you can put cash in there and you can get a little more than you would get in a bank account, in a high yield account. But what I'm here to say is that the money market in the brokerage account usually is as good as a short term interest on a CD, short term meaning 12 months or less.
Got it.
So you really have to lock your money up for more than 12 months
Mhm.
to be able to take advantage of a better rate from a CD. And I don't love that.
Mhm.
So I'm a fan of the money market and the brokerage account. But if you know for sure you've got this pot of cash and you know for 5 years you won't need it, a CD
Mhm.
may get you slightly better interest rate, but that doesn't happen very much in your 20s.
Yeah.
Because what are we doing? We're coupling up, we're having babies, we're changing careers, we're buying houses. There's no 5 year time horizon.
Mhm.
It's just you need money there are too many changes happening at that stage of life.
So definitely those money market and the S&P 500 and the index funds are more important. If you have the money, it's more important to put it into those things
I
unless you
think
have
that's true.
additional things than
Yes.
CDs.
And for your cash buckets, like your emergency savings and so on, I think the money market and the brokerage account is just fine, or the high yield savings.
Mentioned about kind of changing careers and things like that. It's so easy to look online, especially nowadays, and seeing people be entrepreneurs and leaving their jobs to start their
Side
dream
hustles.
job. Yes, but I think people forget kind of the realities of that you need financial security still, and you also don't see a lot of people's failures starting those businesses as well. And so I guess how do you kind of balance wanting to leave your job if you want and start your own business, but also having the financial reality?
So I got one word for you, and that word is runway. So if you want to start your own business or take a side hustle and see if you can make it your full time job or any number of those sorts of things where you're not changing from one W 2 job to another W 2 job, you
Mhm.
have to sit and think about how long it will take you to earn enough after expenses to replace your salary fully. And that's different with every job, right? So I had a woman who she does work in sort of the eco-friendly skin products world. And she said, I really want to, I feel so passionate about this. I really want to do this for a living. I'm like, fabulous, let's do it. And what we worked out together was how much she was married, how much she needed to contribute to the household, and how long she thought it would take her to get to that point. And then the answer turned out to be about 16, 18 months. And so if she needed $3,500 to contribute to the household over 16 months, that's easy multiplication to do.
Hmm.
And so you need to save that cash so that you have it for runway, and then you can go and build that business and have the cash go back to the household so that there's no stress in the relationship, there's no stress on the
Hmm.
household. So it can take a while to build the runway for you to launch whatever it is you want to do. But when you're your age, what's on your side? Time. So
Yeah.
figure it out and have it as a goal and be saving. And then every time you want to buy that pair of shoes or go out and go to that restaurant, look up at that calendar that tells you how long it's going to take you to start your gig. And you may decide not to stay in that night, not to go out, and to save extra dollars. I mean, starting your own business is all about focus, right? It's about peeling away the signal from the noise. I did it. Trust me. I know this from my own sweat and equity. And so once you can prioritize and really get the signal and the noise separated, nobody's going to stop you.
And it paid off because you did that and because you had your priorities.
I'm
Yeah.
maniacally focused. I'm like crazy focused. Yeah.
I think it's something that people have to learn. It's definitely not something you can teach. It's either innate or you learn it.
Yeah, exactly. Or you learn it by failing and then you learn the hard way. You've invested sweat and you know.
So I guess kind of wrapping things up, what was the best financial advice you've been given, or what is something that you wish you knew when you're starting out in your 20s financially?
So I've got to tell you that I never got any financial advice. I wish I did. But I think the best financial advice that I give, it's the happiness thing is still the best financial advice. That gap in your life is just going to keep raising its head. It's just going to keep coming up and you're going to keep spending around it and around and around it until you fix it. But
Hmm.
secondarily, the earlier you start saving, the better off you are. Even if it's, hey, I'm putting $20 into my Roth every month.
Hmm.
Fabulous. I'm on board.
Yeah,
The
that's
earlier,
great.
the better.
And then I guess if people want to kind of connect with you, how can they get in touch with you? I know a little bit about your business and how you kind of work one to one with people, and it can be an hourly charge, no
Exactly.
commitment, which is great.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to say this.
Of course.
So anyone can reach out to us at fearlessfinance.com. There's a contact sheet. If you put in the notes of the contact sheet her way, I'll give you $50 off your first meeting, whoever it is.
Perfect.
And one of our planners will reach out within one day. Most of my planners are much closer to your age, not
Yeah.
me. And they're fabulous. And we're all around the country. We can work with anyone in any state, anyone who is a US citizen working abroad, and we can work in some specific countries. We'd have to know where you were actually residing. But
Mhm.
we work by the hour only. So you just pay for the hour you're sitting there with your planner talking about your plan. And typically for someone in their 20s, 2 hours spread over two meetings, maybe it's 2.5 hours, would be enough to get an
Mhm.
initial plan in. But the critical thing is that you have someone there. And so if you get laid off, if you change jobs, if you decide you're ready to buy a house and you don't know where to turn, like me when I was young, I had nobody to get
Yeah.
financial advice from. You do now. And you
Mhm.
just pop us an email and say, hey, I need to sit down with you for an hour because I'm thinking about buying this condo or whatever.
Mhm.
You've got someone to turn to, and that's pretty powerful.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think support is one of the number one things. And maybe with those consultations, they can realize that they've had this hole and that's why they're spending. And then with that
Absolutely.
realization, they can take the actionable step to fix it.
That's
Yeah.
absolutely true because patterns will emerge, just like that autopsy that we were talking about a minute
Yeah.
ago.
Absolutely.
Patterns will emerge about your spending and when it happens and why it happens. And then suddenly it would be like, well, I'd really love to have a different job because my boss is verbally abusive. Suddenly it's clear what's going on.
Mhm. And then also, can they download their app without a consultation to
Sure.
kind of track?
Yeah. And so if you go to the same site,
Mhm.
fearlessfinance.com, in the right corner, it'll say my account. Just click that and make a new account. And you can just search Fearless Finance wherever you get your apps.
And are you on any kind of social media or anything that people can kind of follow
Yeah.
you on?
It's Fearless Finance on
Yeah,
Instagram.
finance.
Please give us a follow. And we're Fearless Finance on TikTok as well.
Perfect. Okay. And I'll link all of this below in the show notes so people can have access
Thank
to the
you.
website, the discount, the Instagram, everything. And
Yeah,
so
thank you.
it'll
You
be
can
easy
find
to
us on
connect.
Facebook and LinkedIn as well under Fearless Finance, but those are the two we're most active on, TikTok and Instagram.
Perfect. I mean, I know I learned so much from this, and
I'm
I
so
think I
glad.
will definitely implement those things in my life, maybe see some holes that have been filling my things where I've been spending,
Yeah,
and really getting concrete with my priorities as well. So,
absolutely. That's the place to start for sure. It was so much
yeah.
fun talking to you.
You as well. Thank you so much. I really appreciate all of your advice. And I think Fearless Finance is a great way for people starting out or even not starting out to just
Right.
get that support that they need with
Thank
non
you.
commitment, which is wonderful. So.
Exactly. In an accessible way. Yeah.
Thanks so much for listening, guys. I hope you took some things away and really resonated with them. I know I definitely did. I have a lot of things that now I have to rethink. I'm first going to kind of establish my financial priorities, which I think is so important, and also kind of looking at maybe where my discretionary spending has increased a little bit and kind of figure out why. Maybe is there a hole for some reason that I'm filling with that discretionary spending? And living within my means is a big takeaway that I got as well. And if you guys learned some things, definitely comment down below. Definitely share it with a few friends. I know I'm going to share it with my sister because I think this was just a wonderful way and a really understandable way to understand about finance, which can be a little bit of a daunting subject. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate each and every one of you. And I'm so excited that we're building this community together. And I'll see you in the next episode of Her Career, Her Way. Bye.